Andrea, how does the startup environment in Ireland compare to other countries?
Great question from someone who's been super involved in that for many, many, many years as a community builder. And I stopped all that because I had to focus on the startup. And now I'm back in it. So uh, it feels a little bit like there's a pre-pandemic and a post-pandemic thing to it. I spent many years before building Opening.io organizing with a bunch of other great community people, uh, startup weekends in Google here, a bunch of hackathons. I was part of loads of different initiatives like startup hiking, would go up in the mountains, with other startup people or whatever. Askathon, Women in Technology and Science. There was a lot going on here. And I have to say that Ireland, or certainly Dublin, was always known for the great tech community where everyone kind of knows everyone. There's a lot going on and you get access. And I suppose the pandemic came and all of that. And did a lot of that change? I think potentially there's maybe fewer events, or maybe something happened to us as well. We just don't get out there as much, or
Mm,
certainly I do see that. Um, but I will say, regardless of that, I think we have genuinely one of the best. Do I call it an ecosystem or do I call it a community? But one of the best communities in Europe around tech, right? And there's an openness, and there's again the access remains, and there's there are resources, and there are people, and there are you could reach out to anyone and talk to anyone, and so on and so forth. So it's really how do we define that? Is Do we have enough investors? I don't know.
mm,
Do we have enough money in the market? Do we have enough money in the market at early stage? And do we have enough money in the market to follow and allow for the scale ups to actually come out of Europe? Do we have enough accelerators? Do we so there's all of that. And I suppose the answer is we never have enough of any of that. But
yeah.
I do think that we have access. And I think that is, we shouldn't take that for granted, or we shouldn't not acknowledge that, I suppose.
Mm, absolutely. And yeah, I suppose like you're always have to, compare to other countries, that kind of thing. Absolutely. So yeah.
Look, other countries, other ecosystems, if you go to Berlin, you go to Lisbon, you go to London, you go to, all of this where you feel and you hear about other founders building, and it's like, what's there that's not here, or what's here that's not there, and so on and so forth. And then you look at some of them as great examples, and sometimes we look at the States and we go, oh, we're the, there have been so
Mm,
many places in Europe that were the Silicon Valley of something. We're the Silicon Valley of Eastern Europe. We're the Silicon Valley of whatever.
yeah.
So we do, as humans, we always tend to compare because, we need a measure of something. But I do think we have great community people here, and just an openness and a willingness, to open up for that access. So.
Mm. And you started your own startup in Dublin. It was a Dublin-based startup, Opening.io. Why did you start it, and what was Opening.io?
Oh man.
Trip down memory lane.
For sure. I mean, Opening.io was an AI first startup.
Mm,
What does that mean? It means that we didn't really have a product. There was no UI around it. We built models from scratch, wrapped them in APIs, and sold them into industry players. I'll give more detail into what exactly it was. But if I'm to pull back a little bit and kind of go, why? I, as I just said, I did a lot in the community space, and every so often people would kind of try and pull me into their project, into their startup, and would you join? And I could never quite find the thing. And I would mentor, right? I mentored in all the incubators and accelerators in Ireland and abroad. I would organize events. I would support I would do all that kind of stuff. But at some point, I wanted to build rather than help others build. I wanted to do it myself. And it just so happens that a friend that I knew as a teenager was moving to Dublin. I still remember I was speaking at a Google event, Google for Startup events, and I was like, come to this. If you're moving here, you need to understand the tech community. Come to this talk. And he did. He was late. He was one of the people that interrupted my talk, but it was fine. He made it. And he sat down and I was like, there's a lot going on in the tech ecosystem here. And, you could do a lot of things. And he just landed a interesting job and yada, yada. But really out of Adrian, that's my co-founder's name, sort of going through this process of sending his CV, in places in Europe and then in the States. He gets 3 offers, 3 from San Francisco and 3 from Dublin. And the one that he accepts, he sent, it was a company called Poker Stars or Full Tilt Poker or whatever. He sent his CV into that company 6 months before he was rediscovered by an external recruiter and placed into that company for a fee. Now, that company had his CV all along. They did not need to pay thousands and thousands and thousands for a good recruiter to discover Adrian, who, by the way, won the programming Olympiad in Romania many, many years ago. You know, genius. Honestly, I don't say that lightly. Uh, so we kind of started thinking, we started talking. I was like, okay, well, I'll show you what's going on in Ireland, come to more things. And then, what are you doing? What are you doing? And we started thinking about this thing. We were getting very interested in AI. And this was back in 2014. So nearly 11 years ago. And then his journey, and we were like, look, we look at this industry, this recruitment industry, of which I knew zero about. I never worked as a recruiter, and he knew zero about, but we both had the candidate journey. And we were like, you send a CV, goes into this black hole, and nobody gets back to you, even when you know that you're a fit. So like, could we use artificial intelligence, classical machine learning and deep learning? These were all things that we were looking at 11 years ago. Could we use this in a data heavy, document heavy industry? And could we make it so that if you're a fit, you will be discovered? Can we
Yeah.
build this recommender engine? And that's really what we did. And that's how, without knowing absolutely anything about the industry, this is like the big no-no that VCs tell you about. Why would you succeed in this? If you know nothing about it. Well, we did somehow. It was, it helped us and it hindered us in many ways, but it also helped us. But that's kind of how we started. So we started working weekends and nights and then it was August 2015 when we said, we might have a business here. Let's incorporate it. Let's just start a company. And then, off we went and we learned more and more about AI and more and more about the industry and the rest is kind of history, but yeah.
Yeah. And what was it like being an AI company in 2015? Because obviously now everyone knows about AI, but I wonder what was like maybe clients' reaction to what you guys did and that kind of thing.
Oh, well, that was we were explaining something that sounded like magic.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a product. So it was like, imagine if we do this thing and the thing works miraculously, right? And you're like, okay, what does that mean? So we had to become very creative in how we explain what we do, sell what we do, but also build what we do. So we did end up building a small product, which we always knew that we're going to kill. So that was a bit of a weird one. We're like, we don't want to build an applicant tracking system. We don't want to build a product, but we're doing it just for now. And we get some clients and then we kill it. But we're going to keep those clients somehow and convert them into the API, right? So
Yeah.
it was, we had to show them, right? And back then, I mean, accuracy, will the thing work? And again, AI requires data. We did not have data. So we had to, if I am to just pull back, we had to figure out really creative and legitimate ways to find this data before, the EU AI Act did not exist then. Responsible AI didn't exist. Everyone was focused on accuracy. Responsible AI, bias, these things, non-existent, right? But we built the right way because as founders, we're kind of private people and we like doing the right thing, right? So we built the thing the way we would like, the way we wanted it to be built. And we wanted to build a product that we would comfortably want to use if out there in the market as a candidate. So we had to get creative. So we did things like, how do you build algorithms that need to understand CVs and jobs when you don't have CVs and jobs?
Yeah.
And jobs, okay, you can get them. You can scrape job boards or whatever, but you don't have CVs. And you can't really, you need to acquire them in a legitimate way and so on and so forth. So we started partnering, and again, because we didn't know the industry, we started partnering with career fairs who would deal in either physical CVs or the kind of CVs that you uploaded and then there's an iPad or something and you scan, you give it, and we were like, if you give us this data, we're going to give you back nice short lists with explainability around why a person is good, why a person isn't, yada, yada. So, we had to get very, very creative around this data, but honestly, and then we had to build from day one for scale, right? Because this was not a use case. You were not going to use this kind of technology if you looked at 10 CVs. We were talking about thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of CVs from day one. So that also meant that it had to work fast. So we had to we built a vector database before the category even existed. There were no vector DBs. We
Wow.
built one, right? So it had to work, as in be accurate. It had to work fast, as in it had to do the computation fast. And then it had to make sense for, recruiters. So it was a little bit magical.
Mhm.
And that kind of sort of worked for us, but it was also, what is this? What is AI? So I'll tell you this, at some point, I still remember this moment. We're in Vegas and we're at the startup thing, and I'm sitting there in a sea, even back then, of AI this, AI that, whatever. And I look back at our stand and I realize we have at this point, although we were an AI first company doing true deep learning, building something that was working really well, really fast, all those things. I look back at our stand and we're not mentioning AI anywhere.
Mm.
Yeah.
We took the customer voice and the customer problem and we just gave that back. And
Yeah.
there was literally no AI anywhere. There was imagery of certain things and there was the word intelligence here and there or or whatever. But we had to learn that we have to swap what was very dear to us. This is deep tech. This is stuff that's, it's hard to do. We had to let go of that and just tell, here's what we're solving.
Mm. And that's a great story. I mean, to build that without the prior knowledge, maybe let's say, and to come out with that, and it's obviously something you're really, really proud of, and you should be. And you mentioned there about the founders, and we always want to do the right thing. Okay, and you've since departed this company. How does a founder know it's the right time to sell?
Ugh.
To put you on the spot.
Arguably, it's always a little bit early. Arguably, you could do better, blah, 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 blah. But I'll tell you how we knew, right? Or how it worked for us. So it's 2019. And that year, we get approached without us going to market. We get approached by 3 different companies asking us if we're interested in selling. And one of them is in May 2019, and I'm sitting in Jacksonville in Florida, and there's a CEO and a CFO and a COO, and I'm being put on the spot with a question: are you raising? Could we invest or maybe acquire? And I'm sitting there going, what? And I'm trying not to. Internally, I'm kind of dancing. I'm like,
Mm.
really? You really like this that much, right? So there's that. And then in October, I'm at a conference in Vegas, and I'm being told by a CTO that we're on a short list for acquisition. And then actually a couple of weeks before that, someone else, the CTO of a competitor of one of them, asked us, are we interested in an acquisition? So all these things, and look, now I know, like, big companies, when they look at their own strategy, M&A or whatever, they go build, buy, or partner. Are we going to
Mm.
build it? How long is it going to take us? How much is it going to cost us? Do we have the resources? Yada, yada, yada. Buy, what's out there that we could acquire and what's available and how much it costs, and then partner, right? And partnerships are fine, but at some point, it for technology like ours, if you don't own it, it's a bit of a liability, and it's also a high ticket item, um, because we were not cheap.
Mm.
So we had these three kind of all show up in 2019, but two of them gave us actual offers. And then one of them came over to see us in March 2020. And we spent some time in March, in January 2020. And we spent some time with them. And things made sense for many reasons. One, we just knew that the market is ready. When we built this kind of technology, honestly, it was seen as a bit of a holy grail in the industry. Because again, you're dealing with hundreds of, like, at any point, the company that acquired us would have 600 million CVs in their database.
Mm.
600 million.
Wow.
Wow.
That is trillions of data points. I'm not even, I never even say that. It's like trillions. I might as well say gazillions.
Yeah.
But that's the reality, right? It's high scale. It's a lot, thousands of customers, some of the biggest companies in the world, and you need the thing to work, right? And so they're looking, and I'm like, these guys are going to move on. Like, they're going to disappear as an exit potential because build by partner, right? And it just felt that it was a moment in the market when three companies, not one, were looking at this tech. Something is going to happen. And also, realistically, with opening, we never thought that we're going to build a unicorn. That was never the thing. The thing was, we're going to be, if we're lucky, if this is going to work out, if, we're going to be part of something bigger. And we always kind of knew that because, again, we built algorithms. Algorithms needed a place to live, right? And we just
Yeah.
knew that at some point, someone will see the value. So there was all of that made sense. Plus, pandemic arrives in 2020. 2 months later, after the guys are here, 2 weeks after, we get a letter of intent. And
Okay.
suddenly the world changes, and our customers are emailing us and saying, can we pause? Can we make the subscription, whatever, smaller? Can we pause it? Because hiring paused back then. I don't know
Yeah.
if
Mm.
you remember, but so there were many reasons why this made sense. But it wasn't the pandemic, but that certainly gave us a bit of, ooh.
Mm.
But we just felt that the market was ready and these guys are going to move on.
Yeah. Oh, very good. And you've had a bit of a like change in career recently.
I
Would I
did.
be right in saying that? So why did you're in venture capital now
Yeah.
in Dublin?
Yeah.
Why did you choose VC?
Ooh, that is a good question. Well, at one point, I, I, I'll say this and then I'll work back up to it again. At one point, I said someone should pay me for this stuff. And what I meant by that was I would, anyone could ping me at any time, any founder, and go, can you give me some advice? I was doing that a lot even before opening, right? That was the thing that I was doing. I mentored in all the incubators and accelerators. I was actually part of a program where we had 5 million euro to invest in startups in Europe for no equity up to 250K. It was a European thing. I was always in this space, right? And then post acquisition, I would get so many people reach out, not just from Ireland, not just from Dublin, not just from Ireland, but internationally, who either knew me or have seen that I've exited, to ask for advice. So I would do a lot of that, but a lot. I mean, at one point, I actually made a point to look back in a year. I was talking to startups probably every single week and just giving advice, and I never take anything. And if someone
Yeah.
offers me anything, I'm like, why are you doing that? I literally
Mm.
added zero value to you, or maybe 0.0001%. Like, do not offer me things. That's the worst thing you can do. There's another, free advice for you. But I had a lot of that, right? And it was kind of all consuming at some point. I even took 7 months off post acquisition, maybe 2 years into the acquisition when things have settled down. I took 7 months off. I just did a lot of this. I wasn't really off. I just helped startups. So at one point I was like, someone should pay me for this. And then I started doing a bit of tiny angel stuff. Just people that I really liked, to be honest. I was like, I don't know
Mm.
if this is gonna buy like you, and I want you to succeed. So here you go.
Yeah.
Tiny checks. But then there was a period after the acquisition when I kept getting asked to get on board. Will you become an advisor? Would you come on board? And I would always say, you could reach out to me anytime, but, don't ask me to formally, because I was still kind of burnt out. Honestly, I didn't want to accept. But at one point, here comes a startup out of I think the NDRC pre-accelerator. And I have calls with them over a year and a half, every few months, whenever they ping me. Just another startup out of, all these others that I'm talking to. And at one point, they're raising, and the VCs who are interested in them are pinging me in their due diligence process. And I give them my 2 cents, and they, after they do their entire due diligence, they end up investing in this company. This company raises 1 million. And then they ask me, would you become our chair? And it was the first time when it kind of made sense. And I didn't mind it. I didn't feel like I was going to, my burnout is going to eat
Yeah.
me alive or whatever. I just felt like I was ready to kind of take something on. So about a year and a half later, working with this VC, because this VC was Delta, and working alongside Dermot, who's my colleague now, he learned that I'm leaving. And a few coffees later and a few coffee interviews later with all the partners and yada,
Yeah.
yada. So we're looking for a partner. Would you come on board? And after their diligence on me and so on and so forth. But I suppose, if I look at why did they think of me, uh, you know, I'm an ex-founder. I've done it. I understand the journey. I've been in the community for so long. I've done all this stuff. I've helped so many startups because, I like it and it seems to be of value. Um, and then they saw me, execute as the chair, and they saw me through, the various things that have happened in the last year and a half and yada, yada. And all of that made sense to them. And then, to kind of flip it, where I am in my life, it actually made a lot of sense to me as well. Besides the joke, someone should pay me for this because I was doing it anyway. It's also, I genuinely didn't want to go back to doing, I don't know what, that would make me travel
Okay.
far
Yeah.
away. I don't mind going to the RDI, RDI hub down in Kerry or in Galway.
Mm.
I'm in Portishead in Galway next week. But I don't really feel like going to New York right now, or I don't really feel like getting on a plane going to Florida or whatever. Right? It's just in where I am right now. I was like, can I just be here? And then I do follow my passion, and I just like people who build things. So
And that's so great to hear and to be, working in. And you've obviously worked with founders, like you've said, in so many different capacities, whether it was for free, whether it's now with VC. You also mentioned there that as well, some of them, you take a liking to. Is there any particular traits you've seen amongst those successful founders you've been with?
Yeah, they're smart. Like, okay, cool. Uh, what does that mean? They are, they're curious. They execute. They're honest. They don't mind saying, I actually don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And here are the 4 steps I'm going to take to figure it out, right? There's an honesty about them. There's a bias towards execution about them. There's an urgency about them, right? I think the best people I worked with they have some kind of an urgency,
Mm.
they just get the stuff done. But really it's that openness. They're smart, they're honest, they're intellectually honest. They are detail oriented. It's not I hear a lot of pitches, and even before Delta, right? And you hear a lot of moonshots and big vision, but like, how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
And if the how you're going to get there is not clear, or I don't have evidence based in in how you're going about things, it's just never going to happen. And I unfortunately, for them, and these are great people, but I know people who have been working, trying to build their startup for years and years and years and years, and they are nowhere. And it's the execution piece. Right, I'm actually writing an article right now about this execution spiel. I'm trying to find my words to write it, because I see it in the pitches that I see as a VC, but I know what's in, what the solution or the answer it's anchored in as an ex-founder. And I know that might not make sense, but anyway, I'm writing a thing, and I'm trying to put it out there for people to go.
And if you could maybe explain that in a couple words, I know you're writing it. What is that solution that you think it is?
So it is it's funny. I was on a panel or whatever I was doing. I was doing pitching feedback. Yeah, I was giving pitching feedback to a bunch of startups that have a big uh, end of accelerator thing coming up next week. And they were asking about, how to reach out to investors and, the pitch in itself. And I was telling them that your pitch is every single slide in that pitch needs to contain proof of execution and
Mm,
proof. And I could take any of the slides, right? From problem to solution to market to whatever it is. Proof of execution means when you're talking about a problem, how well do you know the industry? Tell me, in this industry with these kind of companies of this size of this is the problem, and it's been existing for don't give me the high level thing. Give me that proof that you actually know what you're talking about, and you can talk about that problem in this succinct, exact, and anchored in real world way. The solution the same, the market the same. Don't just say it's 50 gazillions and our TAM is this and our SAM is 2 gazillions, and then just tell me, why do you know this? All right. And it's not necessarily, quoting some McKinsey thing.
mm,
Tell me why in this industry, this particular population that has this problem, it's this big, and here's how I know, right? So, and honestly, this is something that second time founders are way better at, bringing the real world into the message that they bring to the VCs. I was talking to someone who's a third, fourth time founder, exited twice. So we kind of sold to the same company, and he's building something new. And he's telling me, Andrea, I started with 200 focus groups. Then we took a few of the hundreds of, a few of those in the 200 focus groups and put them in a pilot as individuals. And then we went from there and we did, I don't know, 4 months later, after we've learned a lot, we did pilots with some of those individuals and their teams. And, it's just very execution sort of focused. And I know that founders hear a lot that, you need to tell VCs a big story. And that's true. We want a big opportunity. We want to know that you can sell your company for a lot of money because there's, a lot of people are going to buy what you have. And that's fine. But if you don't know how you're going to do that, then, me who is listening to gazillions of pitches, every year or every week to that matter, I need to see that in you. I need to see that execution, and that ability in you. And that honesty to say, you know what, we tried these 3 things and we've learned these 10 things. And I don't think we did the right thing. However, we now know, and we're not there yet, but we're going to do these 7 things. That to me, I instantly see into your head. I know how you're thinking. I know that you're honest. I know that you've learned the things, because when you speak like that, it also means you project that intent. When you say, I messed up, but I've learned, I believe you that you messed up and you learned, because you wouldn't tell me that you messed up, and for sure you learned, right? So it's that detail, that exactness, but the how behind every single slide, the how behind every single thing that you put out there.
And that's, yeah, the execution, it's vital, I think, for any founder, any company. Um, to piggyback on the pitch, you said you sat through many a pitch, I'm sure. What's a question you wish the founders asked you?
Funnily enough, it's probably not one that. So there's a bunch of questions that a founder should ask, right? Do you have a fund right now? Are you deploying money? Do you have money or not? I'm
Mm.
talking to you not because whatever. I want to talk to Andreea. Okay. Right. So do you have money is, you should ask that. Where in the fund are you? Right. There's one thing if we're deploying this fund and it's new fund and, we started deploying it 2 months ago, our appetite to invest super early with zero revenue is a lot higher than at the end of the investment cycle, when we're going, well, if we invest in you now and you're still not going to have revenues, in 2 years, we're pushing out the whole life cycle of the fund, right? So there are some of these questions around, do you have money? How much do you have? Ticket size, all this kind of stuff. How much ownership do you tend to take? So there are these questions, but I think a question that I never really hear. I feel like those magicians that share their secrets and then everyone hates them. I think people should ask, are you in due diligence with any other company? Because in Delta, we're founder first. We're partner led, right? So we're partner led, which means when you're talking to anyone in Delta, you're talking to a decision maker, but you're also talking to the person that makes the whole thing happen. If I've been talking to a company for the last 4 months, 6 months or whatever, but I'm nearly there, I'm going to give them a term sheet tomorrow. It doesn't matter how great you are. I'm not going to get there with you in the next 2 weeks or a month or whatever, because my focus is to close this deal. And you're coming at me at a really, really poor time. And you could be the second coming of the Christ or something or whatever. I'll be like, I'm so sorry, but I'm actually doing this thing right now. Right. So, but nobody quite gets that. They think, oh, well, it's a VC fund. There's all these people in the fund. Da, 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 da. And sure, I can pass on, a lead that I get to one of my colleagues. But there is something, about people that come to you, that you discover maybe the area that you're in. There is something about that. Like if someone from, wants, it's a recruitment type business or it's an AI business, their chances might be better with me within the group, right? And I'm talking about Delta now and I'm being specific, but this is how it works anywhere really. So if the fund is in due diligence with 1 or 2 deals, it's just not the best timing for you.
Mm.
But nobody really knows that. Nobody has ever asked that. Nobody's, or aware of that. So it's like, okay, because you come back, if you want to close in 2 weeks, then, good luck. But if you want to close in 2 months, just come, ping me in a month or whatever when I'm
Mm,
done with this thing, right? So there is that, because these are big transactions. It's not like, and this is our day to day, and we do it a few times a year, right? So it's not every week. But if you find, a VC that's in the middle of a deal, it- they're just going to focus on that, right? Because again, big transactions, big, and they're not in the headspace, they don't have the capacity, and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I imagine that's completely overlooked actually from a like a founder point of view. But yeah, you mentioned so uh like when it comes to AI businesses and recruitment businesses, you're probably the person to go to. Uh, in those would I be right in saying that?
I mean, you can go to anywhere, anyone when it comes to Delta, you can go to Amy, to Dermot, to Morris.
Yeah.
The way we work is that, if Morris is looking at or Dermot is looking at an AI deal, he will ping me for help. And I
Uh,
go in, like, we help each other in due diligence, right? If
mm,
I'm looking at something that I know that maybe Dermot has done a couple of deals before, or he knows, something about the space that I don't, uh, I'll grab him and go, can you help me out here? Can you hop on a call? So we do that. But I do seem to attract that crowd anyway.
mm.
and how does your experience, like influence your decisions when it comes to dealing with these startups?
The recruitment space is a tricky one, because I think I might be more difficult than someone who doesn't know the space.
Okay.
So that's also, I actually often think about this. People come to me because, you know the space, you get it, you da, da, da. And I'm like, I do. That's why I don't think this is going to work. So it's a little bit tricky, a little bit dangerous. But at the same time, if you're really doing something unique, meaningful, and da da da, I will get it. And I have a big network, global, right? US and whatever, that I can open up. So, and I have, realistically, we pull in external people for due diligence. Just, I asked my ex co-founder to look at, interesting tech companies as part of due diligence. This is what we all do. We ask people who are, subject matter experts to come in and help us. And we have this network of people that know stuff around us, right? So I would definitely, if there's something interesting in recruitment, I will probably ping someone in my network and go, what do you think about this? Someone who might know more about the problem and the solution. Or if it's AI, I often ping Adrian. I know a lot and my gut is telling me a lot, so I know how to differentiate. When I ping Adrian, I'm already very interested. So I just need validation from someone who's super technical. Um, but both because of the recruitment thing and the AI thing, you have to have something real, because I'll know.
Mm. And AI, obviously, it's massive now, and I think a lot of us have been using it as this kind of blanket word. And obviously, there's so much under the umbrella. Is there any specific areas that you're really keen to get involved in?
Yeah, it's a good question, because, there are some VCs that are kind of going where we're not interested in, the LLMs themselves. Those are, those kind of foundational model startups require, well, there's a few in the world, but, there's different things emerging, but, they require a lot of capital, and it just doesn't make sense for our fund. We want to maintain, a certain percentage of ownership, and we're going to dilute it to nothing because they
Mm,
will require gazillions, right? So there are VCs that go, no, not interested in foundational. We are interested in, applied AI in industries with real use cases, real da 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 da. Um, and that's fine. And then I feel that there's not a lot of talk, but there's a big opportunity around forks and picks, which is really, you need infrastructure. to put up AI, right? AI is not just about the models, and AI is not just about LLMs. The best products, the best platforms out there will be multimodal. But they'll have different infrastructures. They'll have, you know, deep learning, and they'll have some so and you have to stand those up. So there's an opportunity in deploying AI where there's all sorts of different categories forming, even from responsible AI and things like that to uh, just all these other things. Like I told you that we built a vector DB when there were no vector DBs.
Yeah.
We even considered at one point doing a spin out, but we never did it. And now, it's too late. And that. But I'm interested in that. I'm interested in the infrastructure that will make, deploying AI possible. And then, yes, the deployment of AI in, you know, industries with real use cases and so on and so forth. But for now, I do see a lot of wrappers, and it's like, we're going to wrap around these 7 products and we're going to do this thing. I'm not in love with those. I
Yeah.
don't think there could be a great business for 3-4 years or whatever, but like I don't think it's, so I'm not mad about just poor wrappers. Uh, I'm interested in companies that have a data strategy and a data moat, and that where they're building a company where they will be generating new data based on which they can continuously build new AI products and features and so on. Because that's like one of the biggest things that I've learned in building in an AI company. You have to think data first, because harnessing data, producing more data, capturing data, all of that will give you so much more possibility around the roadmaps that you can build for your product. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're going to see another, if there'll be an open AI in Dublin, and will us seed investors fight over that, or we're going to focus in real deployment in AI across multiple industries. But also, particularly, I'm very interested in infrastructure stuff, like in just all the things that make deploying AI possible.
You used the word moat, so like startups having a data moat. How important is it for startups to find a moat, and is it important to find it straight away from the get go, or maybe in a few months or years?
Instinctually, you should be able to see it. Of
Yeah,
course, stumble upon stuff. You build a thing, and then your customers are going to use it in a way that you didn't even think, and then you stumble upon a cohort and a way to solve a problem. And yeah, all these things can happen. But you should have the instinct to know that these 3 things could be a possibility.
Mm.
If you don't know for sure from day one that, this is what we have, and this is, what we're going to build upon, and everything that we do is strategic, and it links back to this thing that we're trying to build. And there could also be these other possibilities, and there's 5 of them, and we don't know which one is going to last. But you should have some understanding of the problem, solution, users, and right? That will kind of surface some kind of a moat, and something that's defensible, right? Because we're in a strange time where it's like, what's defensible?
yeah.
The
Mm.
next model, GPT-5 or whatever they're going to call it. As all these naming conventions are a bit, or whatever they're going to call it, or the next Claude thing, or the next Deep Sea, whatever it is that going to just end you, right? And you'll have a nice business for a couple of years, and you'll make some money, and da da da. But it's not the kind of stuff that a venture capital, kind of fund or firm is looking to back. It's so it's hard. It's hard for founders. It's hard for investors, like genuinely. I was at a panel organized by Fierce, where the CFO of OpenAI was speaking, and the last question that was asked by Lorraine who's the founder of Here's, was my question.
Mm.
And I was like, as an investor, what should I know about AI and where it's going in order to, facilitate my, my bets or whatever. And Sarah Fryer, who's the CFO of OpenAI, she was like, yeah, every time I'm in a room where there's a VC, they ask me the same thing. She was like, well, that's your job to figure out. However, here's what I think, right? And I didn't really expect an in, but I just wanted to, see what answer. And honestly, she just went back to solve a real problem where there's still a complicated process,
Yeah.
where it's not just the technology, some magical LLM that will do something. It's part of a process that hasn't yet been solved, where there's just a lot of manual stuff or a lot of complexity in an industry that maybe it's boring. It's nothing, maybe traditionally you didn't have all the technology in the world, but it's that complexity is sometimes a moat, right? Because you will solve for it and you show up to solve for it, where many just won't because it's too big of a headache or whatever, right? So there is that too. But yes, it's a hard time to know what to do, how to build, and where to place your bets.
Absolutely.
There's so much there as well. I think if you're a founder listening to this, I mean, it's so important as well. You hedge your bets in these correct fields and understand where it's going to go, and yeah, try and get that defensibility. But I think we'll bring this one into land. It's been great having you on. I mean, so much information. I've taken an awful lot from this.
Me too.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Where should people go? They want to talk to you. Maybe they want to get up to date. Where should they go?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, but just go to deltapartners.com. We're the only VC fund in Ireland that has open calendars. So just go to our website and go onto my profile and you can email me. You could go to Twitter. I will never call it X. But I'm there too, barely. But yeah, just go to the website, get my email, message me, or just grab me at some event. Come say hi.
Andreea, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for your good guys. Appreciate it.